Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's April 23rd, 2025. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined this morning by Stephen Wagner as we discuss the news of the day. And the news of the day is really the news of the week, so to speak, or certainly the last couple of days, with Miami hosting 3 official visitors that they are pursuing out of the transfer portal. Continued efforts in the portal moving forward here. Miami is believed to be chasing a few other guys before this little window wraps up, and we'll try to give you a little bit of a feel for where things are going and where they certainly are after these visits this week. Stephen, we'll talk about each of them individually, but this is a little bit of a different transfer portal season, I'll call it, so to speak, for Miami. We've been so used to, in the 3 years of Mario Cristobal, them being super aggressive, chasing a lot of guys, trying to sign as many as they can. Not the case this spring, because the roster's a little bit different. It is better, top to bottom. They don't have as many needs. They're trying to pinpoint specific areas that they feel need fortification here, and probably will only sign maybe 4 or 5 guys by the end of the day out of the portal here this spring. Your impressions just on this transition to more a little bit of a tighter approach to the transfer portal?
Well, I mean, yeah, I do agree with you that the roster is better, but I've kind of interpreted the reason that they haven't been, nearly as aggressive in this transfer portal cycle as, quite frankly, this spring portal window has been kind of underwhelming in terms of, the quality of players that have entered the portal. I mean, Mario Cristobal has made incredibly clear that since he's been in Miami, no matter what the roster looks like, if they feel that there is a player out there in the portal that will make them instantly better at a position, that will upgrade the product on the field, they're not going to be afraid to go after that player at that position. I mean, Mario's a guy who, he doesn't really care about feelings. He's known for his brutal honesty, and, he's known for understanding that, in this industry, you kind of have to, put feelings to the side. But I kind of feel like, this cycle, I mean, in terms of real stars in the portal, who's left that's at a real position of need for Miami? You've got Trevor Pena at receiver. ... Yeah, I mean, who else are we really looking at that we really see as, one of these guys who absolutely would be, a free agent caliber player? I think David Stone probably would have been a free agent caliber player if he had been in the transfer portal for more than, what was it, like 24 hours or 36 hours or something like that. But he very quickly just went right back to Oklahoma. The guys that they've brought in so far, I mean, absolutely they will be contributors, because Miami, frankly, does need depth at those positions that, they've brought in. They need depth at running back. They need depth at defensive tackle. They need depth at safety. Corner, I think they're probably pretty solid at, which is, kind of why, I think Carnley, is no longer on the roster. Yeah. Do I think that the guys that, they've had, come in for visits are guys that, really are those free agent caliber players that, are going to be immediate starters? No, I don't. But do I think that Miami right now, as it stands, has the numbers to get through an entire season at the position that they're bringing these guys in for? No, I don't. I absolutely think that, these guys, you will see them on the field next season in big moments. You will see them on the field in moments where it matters. Miami, absolutely is going to need to use multiple defensive tackles. You're not going to get through an entire game just playing two defensive tackles. And Braxton Feely would come in perfectly and fit in on the two deep. I think the same for Noah King. Coming in at safety. I know he was recruited as a corner he was listed as a corner in high school, excuse me. But he'll be coming in as a safety. Miami needs more help at safety, especially now that Zaquan Patterson has gone to the portal. And then Chamar Brown coming in at running back. Jordan Lyle and Mark Fletcher is going to be an awesome 1-2 punch. But you do not want to be in the position where you are having to go an entire season just depending on two backs. You're going to need a guy like Brown who can come in for, 5 to 6 carries a game. Who's to say that something, the injury bug doesn't bite Lyle and Fletcher this season? I mean, Fletcher's dealt with injuries in the past. They just need numbers at these positions. But right now, frankly, I haven't really seen a ton of, guys who I think would truly be marked as, real free agents outside of Pena and, maybe Marion from BYU.
Yeah, and the portal has changed. Also, it's expensive, and you're having to overpay for players. I mean, basketball's facing this. Well, after they hired Jay Lucas, they had set the budget, I believe it's at $8 million, and have already had to up it to $10 million because they can't put a program together with $8 million anymore. And it's amazing. Like this, you think back when Norchad Omier was going in the portal, and he wanted $1 million, and Jim Larinaga was the coach, and they decided, no, we're not paying Norchad $1 million. They stuck with their, I believe it was about a $750,000 offer. Norchad goes off to Baylor. In today's market, Norchad gets his $1 million. There's no doubt about it. If you're even close to a starter level talent in college basketball, you're getting $1 million contract in today's world, which is crazy, and why you see Miami sitting there right now with only 7 signings and still looking to fill out their roster. But and Jay Lucas is doing a really good job navigating it, but it is not easy, and it is carrying over to football where guys that are in the portal that are any good at all are looking for big paydays, and that impacts everything because Miami's done a really good job of setting up a pay scale essentially for their roster and having slots for every guy, every position, so to speak, on the team. First team linebacker, second team linebacker, first team running back, second team running back, so yada, yada, yada. And they've been very disciplined in sticking to that. But this is becoming a different world. And if you want to go get a guy, you're gonna spend money. And it becomes motivation for kids to go in the portal. Miami is doing a great job of fighting that off and keeping the players that they want to keep here. You're also seeing guys that are, low hanging fruit. I don't know if that's a fair term or not, but guys that maybe are not at a place on the depth chart to justify the money they're getting, and they're not afraid to say, we don't have room for you anymore. We saw a couple go in the portal this week. A kicker, Abram Murray, a guy. Carter Davis came in the portal from FAU in the early period and participated in spring practice. This kid is just, better than Abram Murray. I mean, it was obvious. And I mean, the ball just explodes off his foot. He's got a monster leg. He's equally, or if not better, more accurate in field goals. And Abram Murray became expendable here. Emmanuel Carnley, defensive back that they took in the portal, went through spring practice, just wasn't good enough, was not going to play. Emmanuel, you need to go back in the portal. You can't play here. It's an amazing world that college football is at right now. So where does that lead us in terms of the guys visiting this week? And, let's take them one by one here. Boise State defensive tackle Braxton Feely. Okay, this is a kid who made a lot of big plays at Boise State and making a solid move going into the portal. His stats aren't going to be flashy because he's a defensive tackle. He had 5.5 sacks and 9 tackles for a loss last year. But for what Miami is looking for, which is a guy that might come with a little bit of value, he will absolutely would fit the bill for the depth filler that they need on the defensive line so that they can have a 4-man rotation to tackle. And that makes him a really good pickup for Miami if they're able to close this one out. Stephen, you guys had a chance to talk to Braxton Feely about his time in Miami yesterday. Give us a little synopsis of what he had to say about his visit and where he stands with the Hurricanes.
Yeah, Miami definitely did a good job on this visit. I definitely feel better about where Miami sits coming out of the visit than I did going into the visit. But he still has other visits lined up. He's going to visit Georgia Tech. TCU and Texas A&M have also been reported as being in pursuit for him. He was originally reported to be visiting Miami late last week. He ended up going to visit Cal instead, and pushed his Miami visit back to early this week. And what that tells me is, he's not set by any means. I imagine that, there are going to continue to be, NIL negotiations with each of these schools. I think that kind of my interpretation, honestly, with all of these visitors is if Miami wouldn't have hosted these guys if they weren't genuinely interested, if they didn't seriously value having them on the team. But if Miami was absolutely gung-ho, this is a guy we have to have, I don't think they would have let him leave without, really throwing everything at him to commit. I know, Dennis Smith, the executive director of football, we all see the tweets whenever he tweets. It's a marathon, not a sprint. The transfer portal is a sprint. It is nothing but a sprint. And in these sprints, whenever the opportunity strikes to land a commitment from one of these guys, you have to strike while the iron's hot. You have to throw the kitchen sink at them in that moment. Miami's been doing this long enough, and getting guys in the portal for long enough that they understand, what they have to do in these instances if it's a guy who they feel like they absolutely have to have right now. That being said, could Braxton Feely commit later today? Could he commit tomorrow? Could Noah King also commit? And could Shamar Brown go ahead and quickly commit too? Absolutely, that is absolutely possible. But if Miami brought these, and keep in mind, Miami could also bring in additional guys at those positions for visits later in the week and moving forward. But if Miami was absolutely gung-ho, we have to have this guy. We have to have him right now. There is no time like the present. We need this commitment. I don't think Miami lets these guys leave campus without getting a commitment out of them.
All right, so another guy, you talked about Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle earlier, and obviously two very, very good running backs at Miami. It's going to be really interesting to see if they can land Shamar Brown. He's from North Dakota State, has had a really good year last year, rushed for 1,181 yards and 15 touchdowns, averaging 4.8 yards a carry last year at North Dakota State. And you're saying, why would he want to come to Miami when Miami has Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle? Well, Miami can point to Damian Martinez and say, we had Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle last year too, and look at the season Damian Martinez had, and watch where he's going to go Thursday in the NFL draft. We believe in keeping our backs fresh. We don't overwork you when you're playing college football. You guys don't need to get your bodies destroyed. You can have chances to showcase your skills without carrying the ball 25 times a game. And we will do that for you. And we have a great offensive line. You will have opportunities to pick up big yards in the run game. Yes, you will be sharing time with Fletcher and Lyle, but Fletcher's had injury issues in the past. They did a great job of nursing him through the season last year and keeping him healthy the entire year. And I think it's great the way that Shannon Dawson is using these running backs. So they can make a reasonably strong pitch to Shamar Brown on why he should come to Miami. Now, my sources tell me that Nebraska is making a very strong run for him, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, he's from Nebraska himself, so I mean, I wouldn't pencil this guy in for Miami, but I would say the Hurricanes can make a compelling case to him, and it's going to be interesting to see what decision he makes here in the very near future. Another guy you mentioned, Stephen, is Noah King, the defensive back from Kansas State. Very astutely pointed out that while many thought he would be a cornerback coming out of high school, he's really excelled as a safety. And Miami does need safeties. Zaquan Patterson was sent to the portal, and they are light at that position. So I would think they have a great chance to land King. It's an enormous opportunity for him. He's also getting interest from Illinois, Maryland, Houston, Colorado, Miami of Ohio. I think Miami of Florida is the school that's going to land King. I think his commitment could come relatively soon. We'll see what happens. But your thoughts on King? You've had a chance to talk to him extensively here in recent days. Your thoughts on what he would bring to the Miami defensive backfield and the likelihood? Do you agree with me that there's a strong likelihood that he will sign with Miami?
Well, the interest from King's side is absolutely there. I would call Miami a top contender for him. In fact, I could kind of see Miami being the #1 school. I'm not sure that I would go ahead and print that, but I do feel really, really good about the position that the Hurricanes are in. But Miami's also expected to get that safety from Houston down later today as well. I don't know what Miami's kind of thinking in terms of how many safeties they want to take in this portal cycle, but I do know for a fact that whatever Miami ends up getting, or whichever player Miami ends up getting, the Hurricanes are absolutely going to use them a lot. We are going to see them contribute very significantly on the field. Now, that being said, are they going to be starters? Well, maybe. I mean, there's a possibility that they come in and, they're able to earn a starting job at the other safety position. But, I think, if all goes well, Miami would like to be in a position where, they're able to choose between the two safety transfers from Kansas State and from Houston. Noah King, he definitely has expressed that there's very real interest there. We'll see how the Houston transfer safeties visit goes today. But I do definitely think Miami's going to land one of those two guys. I'm just really not sure which one it's going to be. Now, if Miami said, yeah, we absolutely want King right now, I definitely think King would commit. I think he would fully end up a Hurricane. But like I said earlier, I think that if Miami, really, really wanted, these guys right now, they would have, put pressure on them to commit and gone ahead and gotten that portal edition.
All right, and lots of other stuff going on the website today. Yesterday, we brought you a story on the Miami offense and what the roster looks like by the Pro Football Focus metrics. Today, we give you a hard look at the defense. So make sure you check that story out. And if you didn't see the offense one, make sure you go back and review that one. Definitely will give you some information that I think you'll find interesting. It's NFL Draft Week, and we are doing our best to get you ready for the draft. Miami's got several draftable canes this year with Cam Ward, who's expected to go in the first round, Elijah Arroyo expected to go in the second round, Damian Martinez, who could go anywhere from the 3rd to the 5th, possibly. Xavier Restrepo, probably be a mid to late round pick. Tyler Barron, late round. Jalen Rivers, mid to late round. Andy Borgalis, probably, in the last round or two of the draft, will likely get drafted. Kickers don't usually get drafted. He's been very impressive in his workouts. Simeon Barrow will be a late rounder or a free agent. Same with Sam Brown and Jacoby George. And Kiko Mainoa as well, expected to be a possible late round or free agent. And so we've been trying to take a look at the NFL draft for you guys from some different viewpoints here this week. And in the story today, we take a look at the history of the NFL draft and how many players have been drafted from those position groups in relation to other schools around the country. And for example, at quarterback, Miami is tied for 17th in all-time NFL draft picks with 13 quarterbacks taken in the draft. USC leads that one with 26. Miami's 27th in the country with 56 all-time draft picks at running back. Notre Dame has had 104 running backs drafted through the years in the NFL draft. Pretty impressive. Now, how about wide receiver? Miami is 5th in the NFL draft picks with 44 all-time receivers chosen. USC leads that one with 54. So the Canes are doing pretty well there. Miami's tied for 3rd with tight ends with 20 all-time draft picks from the tight end position. Notre Dame has 26 and leads that position. Miami's 39th on O-linemen, 17th on D tackles, 33rd on defensive ends, 10th on linebackers with 39 Miami linebackers have been drafted through the years. Penn State linebacker U, as they like to call themselves, leads that one with 68. Miami is 5th in the nation in all-time draft picks at the defensive back position with 54. Ohio State's had 65. And Miami's 4th in terms of kickers, 57 all-time draft picks among kickers. Ohio State leads with 69, and Miami's tied for 44th at the little drafted position of punter, where one Miami punter has been drafted. Tennessee leads that one with 6. So that's a interesting little feature that we've got for you guys on the website today. We also have our typical recruiting coverage, and today we take a look at 4-star cornerback Jaden Carey. He is one of the best, top recruits in South Florida. He plays at St. Thomas Aquinas, a top defensive back, and the Hurricanes have been honing in on him. Stephen, why don't you tell us really quick? He visited Miami twice this spring. That shows his interest. Are the Hurricanes on the cusp of landing Jaden Carey?
Well, I mean, he is a 2027 kid, but I really want to, start writing some stuff on these St. Thomas Aquinas kids in 2027, because I do think that's going to be really important for Hurricane fans to know who these guys are early, because South Florida really is shaping up to, have a pretty good group in the 2027 class. When you consider kids like Nick Lanier down at Miami Northwestern, you consider Mark Matthews, who is now the number two prospect in the country in the 2027 class at offensive tackle up at St. Thomas. Jaden Carey is absolutely going to be one of those huge names to know. He's a Miami legacy, pretty highly ranked. I think he's the top 250 prospect in the on 300. Zayden Gamble is another on 300 kid who we're going to be keeping a very close eye on. I think that Miami is going to potentially have, maybe 12, actually I'd say 10 to 12 2027 targets locally, all of whom I think they're doing a pretty good job with early on. So, really want, Hurricane fans to start familiarizing themselves with some of these 2027 guys. Know we're, a good ways away, but Carey is absolutely going to be, one of these, big time priorities for Miami in next year's class. It's already shaping up to be a little bit of an Ohio State Miami recruiting battle at St. Thomas. Miami's obviously had some luck at St. Thomas in recent years, flipping Mark flipping Jordan Lyle from the Buckeyes a couple of years ago. Then over at American Heritage, they also were able to flip. Well, I shouldn't say flip, but Mark Fletcher was committed to Ohio State, ended up coming to Miami. I think 2027 is loaded. I think Zayden Gamble's another guy at St. Thomas who is receiving some interest from Ohio State. He could end up coming to Miami. So I think there's a lot of Ohio State-Miami recruiting battles potentially shaping up in next year's class.
All right, another recruiting story that we have on the website today is on a guy that I'm really interested in, and that's running back Derek Cooper from Hollywood Chaminade Madonna High School, and this kid's, without question, one of the best, if not the best, running backs in the country. All you got to do is look at who's recruiting him: Auburn, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama, Florida State, on and on and on and on. He's going to see Texas this coming weekend. Stephen, there's not a bigger priority guy from South Florida this year. This kid can flat play. Where do you think Miami stands with Derek Cooper?
Yeah, I think Miami understands that this is going to be the long game. No matter what, Miami is going to have to play the long game here. I think the Hurricanes are in a pretty good position. They have done a really good job building relationships with not only Cooper but his mother as well. I remember a couple of weeks ago, his mom was down on campus. Derek was not. Derek was visiting elsewhere, but his mom was down on campus. We saw her down there. Matt Merritt, Mario Cristobal, really the entire staff, they have marked Cooper as a huge priority. They're making sure that they're recruiting him. They're making sure they're recruiting his mom. They're making sure that they're tight with everyone in his circle. I think it plays, into Miami's favor that he's going to Chaminade, where the Hurricanes have had a lot of recruiting success in recent years. They signed 2 Chaminade players in each of the last 2 classes. Obviously they missed out on Jeremiah Smith, but outside of that, since Mario Cristobal got to Coral Gables, they really haven't missed on any guys at Chaminade that were really major targets. I think Derek Cooper could absolutely end up at Miami this year. Side note, I also think Jason Lopez at Chaminade could end up at Miami this year too, but we're talking about Cooper right now. I think the Hurricanes can absolutely land him, but quite frankly, I'm not sure where he could initially end up committing. He's probably going to commit at some point this summer. It sounds like he's leaning toward August a little bit at the moment. I have no idea where he could end up. If you had to ask me, the 3 schools that I feel most confident in are Miami, Ohio State, and Georgia. He was committed to Georgia for, I literally think like one day last year. Then, he realized, he might have committed too early. He jumped the gun a little bit, so he decommitted, but Georgia's still fighting for him very hard. I don't really worry quite as much about Florida State and Florida here. I just, have never really gotten the sense that, they are, in as good a position for him as some of these other schools. Right now, Texas does not have him lined up for an official visit, but he did say that he would think about giving Texas an official visit if all went well this weekend. Auburn has also been up there. He hasn't had the chance to visit Auburn this spring. I think that's just kind of because, there are so many schools that are showing interest in him. And, there's only so much time to be able to go visit these schools for spring practices. But like I said, if you had to ask me 3 schools that I'm most confident in, I'd probably say it's either going to be Miami, Ohio State, or Georgia. It would not blow me away if he ended up committing somewhere else this summer and Miami flips him later in the cycle, kind of like what they did with Jordan Lyle. That would not stun me at all. However, it also wouldn't surprise me that much if he just says screw it and goes ahead and picks Miami right away anyway. But no matter what happens, this is a recruitment that is not going to be over until signing day. Even if Miami does land his commitment this summer, they are going to have to hold on for their lives because this is the kind of explosive back that Georgia and Ohio State have, really, really prioritized in recent years. Ohio State, obviously, they've had some recruiting success at Chaminade too, and in South Florida. Ohio State can boast, hey, we went to Chaminade a couple of years ago and we took Jeremiah Smith, who was the #1 player in the country. Who's to say that we can't go out and get who we perceive as the #1 running back in the country from Chaminade too? So I think this recruiting battle I think this recruitment's heating up to be a really, really intense battle. I'm not thinking that this is going to go away anytime soon. I think that we're going to be talking about Derek Cooper and potential suitors for a very long time.
Yeah, Miami's got to start getting more of these elite guys. We've seen some of them in the past, leave Miami hanging at the end there. And Derek Cooper is a good litmus test on whether they're making progress in that regard. Like Steven said, They have been able to land guys from Chaminade in the past, but they haven't all made it. Okay, and the latest to not make it is Quan Patterson, and that can make it a little trickier when you're recruiting kids from high school if everybody doesn't make it. So you got to kind of be selective sometimes on who you recruit from certain schools. But this is going to be a good test for Mario Cristobal this year to see where he's at in recruiting locally. Derek could be a really good one. Hopefully the Hurricanes emerge on top there. All right, and for those of you basketball aficionados, we have a story today looking at just exactly where Miami is as new coach Jay Lucas revamps the roster. He's got 7 players to this point. Going to need a few more than that, obviously, and they're working hard. But so far, he's picked up a point guard in Trey Donaldson, who's a transfer from Michigan. He's picked up a shooting guard, True Washington, a transfer from New Mexico. A small forward, Shelton Henderson, who was a 5-star recruit for Duke this year, that they got to leave Duke and come to Miami. That's a great pickup. Don't forget, Shelton, bring the Boozer twins with you. Still got to hold out hope that some miracle can happen there. Malik Renault from Indiana, he's a power forward. Nice pickup. And then they picked up a center, Ernest Uda, to round out the signees right now that they have. And we will continue to follow it. Actually, I should point out 2 other guys, Dante Allen, a shooting guard, and Timotek Malovek, a European forward, have also committed to Miami. So that makes up 7 players. Didn't mean to leave you last 2 guys out. Just was racing a little ahead of myself there. But the basketball roster is coming together. Still a lot of work left to do for Jay Lucas. But that's going to conclude it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you so much for starting out your day with us. If you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, you've seen the information down below at the bottom of your screen. Your subscriptions literally do allow our entire team to do what we do every single day to try to make you guys the most informed fans on the planet of any team. So please, 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 if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport, get your butt on over to CaneSport.com, join our community, spend your days talking to other like-minded Canes fans about your favorite team. We don't think you'll be sorry. We've got a great community of fans that really have a wonderful time talking Miami football on a daily basis. So for Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you again for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next time.